But I'll hint at the next video I'm doing. It's the best CPU cooler that you can just take out of the box, that you can go to Amazon or Micro Center and buy and just throw on your PC.
3 weeks later.
That work to maintain a steady state room ambient temperature. Jumping into the coolers we have for testing, we have the Arctic Liquid Freezer V2, which retails for $155 MSRP. Keep in mind all these coolers are usually on sale, but I'm just going off the MSRP. Next up is the new Arctic Liquid Freezer V3 that came out during the time of testing. It retails for $163 and is on sale for the first 3 months of launch at $115. Next up, we have for air coolers, we have the Noctua NH-D15 chromax.Black edition, which retails for $129. Next up, we have the ID Cooling A720. It retails for $69.99, which is our cheapest cooler we'll be testing today. And lastly, we have the Ice Giant ProSiphon Elite, which is technically not an air cooler, it's a siphon cooler. It's also our most expensive cooler, retailing for $169. There's other things to consider like mounting and compatibility. I'm not specifically taking that into account. We're just looking at which cooler provides the lowest temperature and how much better is one over the other at accomplishing that. This is done all on an open air test bench, both for an Intel 14900K and a Ryzen 7 7800X3D. We'll also be implementing Intel's 253 watt power limit, and I'll also do testing without their power limit. Moving on to the test conditions, I maintained a room ambient temperature of 23.3 degrees Celsius for all testing. All CPU coolers were tested with the same MX6 thermal paste. All the thermal paste was spread evenly across the top of the CPU with a thermal grizzly spatula. Each time a new CPU cooler was installed, I cleaned off the CPU with 99% isopropyl alcohol with some cotton swabs, and then followed that up with a Arctic cleaning wipe. Next up, we have all the tests with the Intel system. We're done with a thermal grizzly contact frame. I didn't want the limiting factor to be the poor connection between the CPU and the CPU cooler. That is why I used a contact frame. Only time I didn't use the Thermal Grizzly contact frame was with the new Arctic Liquid Freezer V3 because it uses an integrated contact frame. All tests with the Ryzen 7 7800X3D were done with an AM5 offset bracket, except for the Ice Giant ProSiphon Elite and the ID Cooling A720 because these coolers didn't offer an AM5 offset mount. Now each cooler was manually controlled and set to the 100% fan speed specification. For example, the Noctua NH-D15, those fans spin at a max of 1500 RPM. They're set to the max of 1500 RPM. So all coolers were set to the maximum manufacturer specifications since we were just seeing which cooler provides the best cooling. Now, how did I test these coolers? Each cooler was idled for 45 minutes at the desktop. Then the Cinebench R23 multi-core score was run, the 10-minute test. Then each cooler was given 10 minutes to cool off, and then I ran Cinebench again, the 10-minute multi-core score, and that's the test you will be seeing in the side-by-side comparison, and that's the data I recorded. This was done to reach operating temperature for each cooler, and for the liquid coolers to reach equilibrium temperature. Now, I don't need to do much talking, I'll just show you these. Keep in mind this is times 10 speed, so it's going to be 1 minute for each test. We want to be looking at the CPU package temperature. I highlighted it with a box around it as well, so you can see in real time on how it's actually able to dissipate the heat. First up is the Intel 14900K at 253 watts for all the air coolers. Next up, we have the individual core temperatures for the 253 watt test for all the air coolers. Now we are moving on to the water coolers. This is again the 253 watt test. Now moving to the 253 watt test for the water coolers with all the individual core temperatures. Now taking the best performing air cooler versus the best performing water cooler. Now the best performing air cooler and water cooler with each individual core temperature. Now moving on to Intel's no power limits for the air coolers. Now moving on to Intel's no power limits with all the individual core temperatures for the air coolers. Now moving on to Intel no power limits for the water coolers. Now moving on to Intel's no power limits with all the individual core temperatures for the water coolers. Now taking the best performing air cooler versus the best performing water cooler. Now the best performing air cooler and water cooler with each individual core temperature. Moving on to the Ryzen 7 7800X3D for the air coolers. I didn't record the individual core temperatures for this one. Now moving on to the water coolers for the Ryzen 7 7800X3D. Now taking the best performing air cooler versus the best performing water cooler. Now for the people that wanted a bar chart, here's a quick recap. For the Intel 14900K at 253 watts, the best performing water cooler versus the best performing air cooler, the water cooler outperformed the air cooler by 13% or 11 degrees Celsius. For the Cinebench score, it outperformed it by 0.8% or 309 Cinebench points. For the Intel 14900K, at no power limit, the best performing water cooler versus the best performing air cooler. The water cooler outperformed the air cooler by 0.9% or 1 degree Celsius, and for the Cinebench score, it outperformed it by 3% or 1,244 Cinebench points. For the Ryzen 7 7800X30, the best performing water cooler versus the best performing air cooler, the water cooler outperformed the air cooler by 4% or 3.8 degrees Celsius. For the Cinebench score, it outperformed it by 0.7% or 137 Cinebench points. Also, these were just some of the best water coolers and air coolers on the market that I could find from my research at the time of filming. There's no way to definitively say these are the best air coolers or the best water coolers. The whole goal was just to find the best out-of-the-box solution, so no custom liquid cooling or anything like that. And these were regarded as some of the best on the market, but I can't test every single one of them. These were the highest performing ones that I could find from the weeks of research I did for this. But if you were looking at home which one just simply provides the lowest temperature and by how much, it is the water cooler that you should go with. Again, might not be a surprise to most, but I really wanted to see for myself, and I was tired of seeing really boring bar charts, and I wanted an exact side-by-side performance comparison. And hopefully in the future I can add more coolers to the testing suite, and we can see and make a bigger list of coolers over time. But none of these coolers were sent to me. They will all be linked in the description below. They are affiliate links. That will be the only money I make off this video, since this is not monetized at all. But regardless, thanks for watching, and in my next up and coming video will be the MSI Claw, which you can see behind me. It's not great. It's crashed a couple times. It's frozen, and but until then, thanks for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Oh boy.